The story of the modern world is, in many ways, the story of two great powers, the United States and Russia, locked in a decades-long struggle for influence. This rivalry is more than a contest between governments. It's a clash of ideas, capitalism and democracy versus state control and authoritarianism. From the Cold War to today's digital battlegrounds, their feud has shaped global politics, alliances and conflicts. Even now, nations worldwide must navigate the tension between these giants, making choices that affect trade, security and diplomacy. The rivalry has evolved, proxy wars, sanctions, cyber attacks, but the core struggle for power and influence remains. This enduring contest continues to shape the destiny of nations and the world we live in. The seeds of this historic rivalry were sown in the final uncertain days of World War II. The United States and the Soviet Union, once united as allies against a common enemy, soon revealed irreconcilable visions for the future of the world. Their partnership, forged in the fires of war, was always uneasy, built more on necessity than trust. As the dust settled, the US championed free markets, open societies, and the promise of democracy. Meanwhile, the Soviet Union, deeply scarred by the devastation of war and haunted by memories of past invasions, sought security above all else. Stalin aimed to create a protective buffer of communist states across Eastern Europe, believing this was the only way to prevent future threats. Stalin's rapid expansion into Poland, Hungary, and East Germany sent shockwaves through the West. Western leaders saw these moves not as defensive, but as the first steps of communist aggression, threatening the balance of power in Europe. The ideological clash, capitalism versus communism, ran deeper than politics. It was a battle of worldviews, with each side convinced that its system was the path to progress and freedom. This fundamental divide made compromise seem impossible. In 1946, Winston Churchill's famous Iron Curtain speech captured the new reality. Europe was now split in two, the wartime alliance shattered, and a bitter global struggle was just beginning to take shape. The world itself seemed to split into two rival camps, each led by a superpower convinced of its own moral and political superiority. Nations everywhere were forced to choose sides, shaping alliances that would last for generations. The Cold War had begun in earnest, setting the stage for decades of confrontation, suspicion, and competition on a global scale. This was the dawn of a feud that would define not just the 20th century, but the lives and destinies of millions around the world. The Cold War was a decades-long global standoff between the United States and the Soviet Union. Fought not on traditional battlefields, but through nuclear arms races, proxy wars, and fierce technological competition. It was a period marked by suspicion, secrecy, and the ever-present threat of global catastrophe. The nuclear arms race created a terrifying balance, mutually assured destruction, where both sides amassed enough weapons to destroy the world many times over. This fragile equilibrium meant that any direct conflict could have led to total annihilation, keeping the world in a constant state of tension and fear. The space race, from the Soviet launch of Sputnik to the American Apollo moon landing, became a symbolic battle for technological and ideological supremacy. Each achievement in space was seen as proof of a nation's power, fueling national pride and international rivalry. Proxy wars in Korea and Vietnam turned smaller nations into battlegrounds for superpower influence, costing millions of lives and leaving deep scars on the regions involved. These conflicts showed how the Cold War's reach extended far beyond the borders of the US and the Soviet Union. The Cuban Missile Crisis in 1962 brought the world to the very brink of nuclear war. For 13 tense days, the fate of humanity hung in the balance, narrowly averted by intense back-channel negotiations and diplomatic maneuvering between the superpowers. Throughout the Cold War, both sides relied heavily on propaganda, espionage, and covert operations to undermine each other's influence. Spies, secret agents, and intelligence agencies like the CIA and KGB became central players in this shadowy conflict. The Cold War's shadow loomed over every corner of the globe, shaping politics, economies, and societies. From divided cities like Berlin to protests and uprisings around the world, its impact was felt by millions, influencing generations. It was a conflict fought everywhere, across continents, in the skies, and even in space, but never directly between the two superpowers. The legacy of the Cold War continues to shape our world today, reminding us of the dangers of rivalry and the value of diplomacy. By the late 1980s, The Soviet Union was collapsing under the weight of economic strain, widespread shortages, and the failure of its long-standing central planning. Factories slowed, shelves emptied, and ordinary citizens waited in long lines for basic necessities. The promise of a workers' paradise had faded, replaced by frustration and uncertainty. Gorbachev's glasnost and perestroika reforms, intended to revive the system, instead exposed deep flaws and unleashed forces he could not control. Across Eastern Europe, people demanded freedom, sparking mass protests and revolutions. The world watched as the Berlin Wall fell, symbolizing the collapse of communist rule and the hope for a new era. In 1991, the Soviet Union dissolved, ending the Cold War after decades of tension. Russia, once the heart of a superpower, was left weakened, humiliated, and struggling to find its place in a rapidly changing world. The United States emerged as the world's sole superpower, while Russia plunged into economic collapse. Hyperinflation, mass unemployment, and political chaos gripped the country. Many Russians faced poverty and uncertainty about the future. The 1990s became a decade of hardship and disillusionment for millions of Russians. Daily life was marked by scarcity, instability, and a sense of lost dignity, fueling resentment and a longing for restored strength and pride. Western influence grew rapidly, with foreign brands and culture flooding Russian cities. Yet for many, this new openness only highlighted the depth of Russia's decline and left a deep scar on the national psyche. Amid the chaos, the dream of regaining lost power and respect began to take hold. National pride simmered beneath the surface, waiting for a leader who could restore Russia's place in the world. This period of turmoil and transformation set the stage for a dramatic comeback, as Russia searched for stability and a renewed sense of purpose. On New Year's Eve 1999, Vladimir Putin rose to power, promising to restore order and Russia's global status. A former KGB officer, Putin centralized authority, curbed oligarchs, and used oil wealth to stabilize the economy. His message of strength and pride resonated with a population weary of chaos. Putin viewed NATO's expansion as a betrayal and a threat, vowing to defend Russia's interests. Under his leadership, Russia became more assertive, modernizing its military, using energy as leverage, and challenging the West. The brief post-Cold War thaw ended. Confrontation returned. Putin's Russia was determined to reclaim influence and resist Western dominance. The old rivalry was reborn, now with new tactics and ambitions. Tensions erupted in 2008 when Russia invaded Georgia to block its NATO ambitions, signaling a new era of confrontation. The West condemned the invasion, but avoided direct conflict, revealing limits to their resolve. In 2014, after Ukraine's pro-Russian president was ousted, Putin swiftly annexed Crimea, violating international law and redrawing borders by force. The US and EU responded with sanctions and support for Ukraine, but Russia doubled down, backing separatists in eastern Ukraine. These actions shattered hopes for partnership and reignited the rivalry. Russia's willingness to use force to protect its sphere of influence was clear. The events in Georgia and Ukraine marked a turning point, plunging relations into a deep freeze. The stage was set for even more dangerous confrontations. In the 21st century, the US-Russia rivalry expanded into cyberspace and economic warfare. Russia's cyber attacks and disinformation campaigns targeted Western elections and institutions, sowing discord and mistrust. Economic sanctions followed Russia's actions in Crimea and the 2022 invasion of Ukraine, aiming to cripple its economy. Russia retaliated by weaponizing energy, creating divisions among Western allies. The 2022 invasion of Ukraine became a brutal proxy war, with the US and allies arming Ukraine to resist Russian advances. The conflict blended old-school trench warfare with modern drones and information campaigns. Ukraine became the most dangerous flashpoint since the Cold War, with the risk of escalation ever present. The rivalry now threatens global stability in new and unpredictable ways. The US-Russia rivalry is about who sets the rules for the world, law and sovereignty, or power and spheres of influence. It drives global alliances, forcing nations to choose sides and shaping everything from trade to security. Both countries use the rivalry to rally domestic support and justify their actions, blurring the line between foreign and internal politics. Propaganda and information warfare are now central tools, as seen in recent high-profile incidents. The contest is no longer just about ideology, but about influence, security, and the future world order. This feud has defined the past century and continues to shape our present. Understanding it is key to understanding the forces that will shape our world for years to come.